Welcome to the Man Cave Podcast with Dan Casper.
It is time for our Outdoor Tidbits with Mr. Jake Bolks, Conservation Warden for the state of Wisconsin. We've got 4th of July coming up a week from today, so we know it's going to be a busy weekend, not only for a bunch of people out there who enjoy the outdoors, but for Jake as well. Jake, how you doing this morning, bud?
Doing great. Another beautiful Thursday morning, that's for sure.
Yeah, no kidding, man. So, hey, before we get to some 4th of July stuff, maybe some safety and some rules in that, so you mentioned last week and again this morning, probably something good to hit up because, and maybe some people have seen it on social media, we got some fawns running around. It's that time of year with the deer fawns running around. What should people do if they see one? Maybe it's even kind of hanging out in their yard, or what's some advice and some tips for everybody out there about that?
Yeah, so when it comes to wildlife, in general, it could be any time of year, but especially this time of year with all the babies hopping around and such. The best advice any warden or DNR official is going to give you is to just leave it alone. If you got a fawn in your landscaping or in your yard, that's totally fine. The moms leave them alone throughout the day to go and eat and keep the predators away and such. And they don't move specifically for the reason of if they're not moving, it's harder to find them and stuff like that. So it's a biological thing. So the only time we have people, ask to intervene and or just give us a call is when if there's a fawn laying in the middle of I-94, if they're, alive, if it's on a sidewalk in a very urban area, if it's been in the same exact spot for 3 days, then give us a call. Otherwise, they might be using your yard as a place to grow the animal and stuff like that, and they might be there every single day for a couple weeks and stuff like that. So just try to keep wildlife wild. That's always the motto, is keep wildlife wild. Just try not to get your hands on them, stuff like that. What we're seeing a lot right now is that there's just a lot of people with, I'll give them the benefit of the doubt and say they got good intentions, but they're grabbing squirrels, they're grabbing possums, they're grabbing rabbits and deer and stuff, and then raising them in their mudroom or laundry room or whatever. And then the hard part about that is that when we end up having to take them, is that if they're too far habituated with humans, or if they're not as healthy as people think because of the diet they're being given, sometimes they have to be euthanized, or they can't be rehabbed because of that. So try to keep them on the wild. That's the best chance for any animal.
Do you guys get a lot of calls about fawns and such like that?
We do, and a lot of times it's people doing the right thing and calling and asking questions, or alerting us that they got a fawn in their yard or their neighbors and this and that, and then we explain kind of what we're talking about right now, and then I always tell them, give me a call tomorrow if it's still there, and I never get calls back because the mom comes in at night, they move a little bit, and life is good. Mm-hmm. But we do have a fair amount of complaints coming in right now. People posting images on social media, people talking with their friends, family, or coworkers and saying that they got all these animals in their houses, and that's when we get involved. And we use our discretion, and we usually try to use education as much as possible when it comes to captive wild animals. But for people that do this every year and stuff like that, there are some citations that are definitely being issued to these people that continually do it even after being educated, and stuff like that. So it's definitely a citable offense.
Right, exactly. Jake Bolks, our DNR Warden buddy, joining us here this morning. I was driving across the bridge over by your office there, dude, and the water's high right now. I mean, it's pretty high. We've got 4th of July coming up, and I know a lot of people are going to be on the water and that too. So, I mean, big weekend, especially with the water levels and a lot of people out there. Safety first, right?
Safety first. We talked about it last week. We'll probably talk about it this week. We won't talk about it next week because hopefully you're off enjoying 4th of July while I'm working away. I'm just kidding. But no, hopefully, everyone just needs to be careful. The ATV, UTV trails, even with some of these strong storms, I've seen different reports of areas where they're closed or there's low-hanging trees and stuff. So people need to be cognizant of all that. But yeah, on the water, the river's high. Any bridge you drive over right now, anywhere you go, you can see it. The water's high, and if the water's high, then you know the current's ripping, and there's more potential for accidents to happen. So, always wear a life jacket. And when in doubt, wear a life jacket. Make sure your plug actually keeps the water out. Make sure your engine or your batteries are charged. You have enough gas. Everything like that. So, like in an oh crap situation, you're prepared. That's kind of the safety aspect. Obviously, from like a regulation standpoint, this is the busy time where people are going to be ripping out their ATVs, UTVs, boats and stuff that maybe they haven't taken out yet this year. So make sure your stickers are up to date. If not, get them up to date. If you have friends coming from other states, they have to have like trail passes if they're on ATV, UTV trails. And then, there's helmet regulations, there's speed and lighting and different things. So I always encourage people to, take some time around the campfire or at the cabin or at your house before you go out and just read those regulations and just make sure you're up to snuff on what's going on.
Jake, you mentioned the campfires. We've had plenty of rain, we all know that, and the grass is green. And in campgrounds, you've got your fire rings, but some people go wild camping. Are there restrictions on that to build a fire out in the middle of a wild campground, so to speak?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So specifically when it comes to state land, in Wisconsin, 99% of camping areas, allowable camping areas on state land, have some sort of fire ring, and the fire has to be within that fire ring. There are a few like campsites, but even at those like primitive campsites, it's still like a designated area where you're supposed to have that fire. And again, it's on state land. So on state land throughout the state, unless you're on one of those campsites, you can't have a fire. So you can't just take a hike into the forest down some 3-mile long trail one day and stop and camp, or stop and have lunch and make a fire. So you can't do that on any state lands. Now, county lands and federal lands throughout the state, there might be some different rules. And I don't like giving this answer, but it is the right answer. Is wherever you go, you just have to do your due diligence on knowing the rules before, because I can't speak on every property and every jurisdiction or agency throughout the state. So if you go up to the Schwamigan, or if you go to a county forest or this or that, they might have a little bit different rule that is here in Eau Claire. So if you're going to go somewhere different, really make sure you read the rules, find out what you can and can't do before you go there, so you don't get in trouble by the local authorities. And
all the elk tags have been spoken for.
Yep.
Looks like it, yeah.
Yeah, it looks like
pretty exciting.
Good number of hunters from our area. Some of the addresses, we don't have names, but we have addresses, towns they're from, and looks like it should be a good hunt.
Yeah, it's exciting to just have that opportunity to have a few more people.
Now this
able
is
to harvest some.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, but for these people that have gotten these tags this year, that's it. They got one shot, and then somebody else gets a shot. It's once in a lifetime, right?
It's a truly once in a lifetime ordeal. It's not like a once in a lifetime that you might get again when you're 60. At this point, it is once in a lifetime. I think they basically cut your customer number ID out of the drawing or whatnot because you've had your opportunity. So, which makes sense.
It is because there's so few.
Limited amount. We have 10,000 elk in 20 years. It's not gonna. It's gonna be a couple hundred more, but not thousands.
Have you? I don't know if you've kept track. I know the 8 probably has. How successful? I think most of these people that get these tags are coming home with elk, aren't they? Oh
yeah, I couldn't speak on the numbers, but if it's not 100%, it's right up there.
Yeah.
I think based off the local landowners, local hunters, guides, everyone knows where the herds are. And it's again, it's not, you're not out in the mountains, so you can scout it, you can find them, you can do it. So I think it's pretty, I don't want to say easy, but it's I guess easier to at least locate them and have a better opportunity than maybe when you go out west.
Mm-hmm. Hey, Jake, just to wrap it up here quick, just a general question, because I got a news release about it last week. Have you been getting any questions, or have you guys been getting briefed about this cicada ordeal in the state?
we got an email right before that statewide press release went out. It's not in my area, so I'm not super familiar with it, but I guess at the end of the day, people wanted to harvest them off state lands. And again, state lands, I mentioned this just a couple times because it's important for people to know, is like state lands have way different rules than maybe your county forests, than maybe you're allowed to do on private land, and different things like that. So like that rule is for state lands. So you can't go, I think it was like Bigfoot Beach State Park or something like that down there where people were going and they're harvesting them. It might be different on private lands or stuff like that, but specifically on state lands, you can't harvest cicadas.
Gotcha. All right.
Which is interesting. I guess I never even thought about harvesting them, but...
Right, yeah, exactly.
I'm sure if you deep fry anything, it tastes good, right?
I don't want to try that, so no thank you for that.
I brought some stuff back from Montana that a lot of people didn't want to try.
Yeah, right. Yeah, no, it's interesting. So we'll see. Yeah. The last thing I'll hit on real quick before you gotta go here is, we were talking about being safe on the water and stuff like that, and that's obviously the most important. And just like I always like to give people a heads up, just like State Patrol does or the local law enforcement agencies. This time of year is a really big time of year for us to be working out on the trails and out on the boats and stuff like that. So we'll have all of the wardens and for OWIs and stuff like that. So, when you're out driving boats and driving ATVs, definitely, keep in mind to be safe and be responsible if you're drinking and driving and stuff like that.
How does the open container law? In a car, obviously, you can't have an open container.
Yeah.
What, an ATV or a pontoon or whatever?
Yeah, so in this state, all wrecked vehicles, there's technically no open container law. I think there is some legislation on maybe changing that in the future. But at this point, you can ride down the ATV UTV trail with a beer or a mixer in your glass. You can drive a boat with it. Technically, you could drive a snowmobile with it, but that'd be pretty impressive between cold time of year and need two hands to steer those things. But you can. But just because you can doesn't mean you always should, right? So it's totally fine if you're having one, if you're doing this, if you're just out on a sunset cruise and having a bush, whatever. But the people that we end up dealing with, the people that end up killing themselves or other people are the ones that have 10 of those, and then they go driving. And unfortunately, a lot of times when we arrest a drunk in a boat or a drunk in a UTV, there's someone else that's sober in that UTV or sober on that boat that could have just been driving the whole time. So I really encourage people just to let a designated driver do their job if they're going to have one.
Mm-hmm. Jake, be safe out there next week, buddy. We appreciate everything you do. Otherwise, enjoy the 4th with the family and the kiddos, and we'll catch up with you again soon, okay, bud?
Yeah, no, that sounds great. We'll talk in a couple weeks. I really hope you guys and everyone listening has a really good 4th of July. It should be a good time.
Absolutely. All right, Jake, we'll talk soon, okay, bud?
Yep.
There you go, Jake Bolks, Conservation Warden for the state of Wisconsin.